Welcome to the celebration of life for Mary Murray. My name is John Joseph Mastandrea, minister at Manor Road United Church. Just a special announcement. Please put your cell phones in airplane mode with the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth disabled. And please don't use vibrate mode as it still emits a signal. And thank you kindly for considering the sensitivities of others. As we gather, we have our wonderful Sharon Beckstedt, and we have Brian McIntosh, who was literally born at the Manor, I believe, as a cradle Manor person, and also a student from Manor Road, and also a colleague, and we attended Emmanuel College together. And Don Reynolds has his hand up. You can't hear me. 1 second. It should be fine. Okay, I'll just shout louder than normal. I'm not sure why, but all the things are supposedly. Can the people on Zoom hear me? Just put your thumbs up if you can. Okay, they can hear me. We're halfway there. That's good. So as we gather, each of us brings a memory, a moment in time, a gift to discover. And it's the memories that we share that ignite the page of our heart and the page of our life. And as a moment of beginning, I wanted to share with you a song I sang at my mother's own memorial. It was more of a wake. It was 2 years ago. My mother didn't want a funeral, so we had 300 people, open bar at Manor Road. This is the United Church. Going home, I am going home. Quiet like some still day, I am going home. It's not far, just close by, through an open door. Work all done, care laid by, never fear no more. Mother's there, expecting me. Father's waiting too. Lots of faces gathered there, all the friends I knew. I'm just going home. No more fear, no more pain, no more stumbling by the way, no more longing for the day, going to run no more. Morning star, light the way, restless dreams all gone, shadows gone, break of day, real life has begun. There's no break, there's no end, just living wide awake, with a smile here and there, going on and on, going on and on. Going home, I am going home. Shadows gone, break of day, real life has begun. And a reading from Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. O hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. If you, O Lord, gather with us now. It is a gift to be, it is a gift to know, it is a gift to discover. Let us pray. Spirit of God, unseen as the wind, gentle as is the dove, teach us the truth and help us believe. Show us the Savior's love. You spoke to us long, long ago, gave us the written word. Reread it still, needing its truth. Through its God voice is heard. Amen. Now we have a few tributes. Yes, we're going to do in the garden. Thank you, Sharon, for keeping me on track. See, it's good to have Sharon keeping on track. I come to the garden alone, Well, the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. But the Lord we share as we tarry there, another has ever known. Now we do have a few tributes, and we begin with the tributes by family. And I'm going to call up, we had a few people who said, I'm going to speak today. So if you know you're going to speak today, I trust you are an honest person. So I invite you to come to the microphone. I'm just going to check on the signboard over there, because I think I know what may have happened.
Hi, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Art Barber, Aunt Mary's handsome nephew. We, up until last week, I thought that this upcoming couple of months, the social big event of the coming month would be my best friend's daughter's wedding. But Aunt Mary managed to sneak in ahead of that. So this is having this social gathering and being able to see everyone who's here and on the Zoom. Hello, everyone. Frank and Enid, Chris, hi. It's great that Aunt Mary timed this so we could actually do this as an extended family. I'll get started at the beginning. Mary Louise. She was born in Hamilton, June 22nd, 1927. And she lived a fantastic 94 years. Here we're all here for Mary, but at different aspects. I see Mary as an aunt. My mom sees her as a sister, the boys as mom, grandkids as grandma, and friends and neighbors as their friend. But we all have that same remembrance of Mary's cheerful disposition. She grew up in Grimsby, and at the nursery, they actually worked for my grandma and grandpa worked for Edie Smith, and they the jam people, by the way. When Granddad moved to Dominion Nurseries, 100 acres on Bayview and Dufferin area in Shepherd, he was managing the fruit trees. They eventually did move, and that's where they ended up in Vaughan at 42 King High Drive. Mom and Uncle Frank and Aunt Mary all went to the Dublin School, a one-bedroom or one classroom school that taught 1 to 8. And you had to like the teacher, because that one teacher probably taught you right from 1 to 8 and all the different subjects. And one of their, in the process of going to school, the shortcut was doing the fields, whether they rode their bikes or walked in the winter snow. And not like today's kids. Back then, you were walking in the snow in your parents' pajamas uphill both ways. My mom always used to say that Aunt Mary was such a lovely skater, and she passed on that skating ability to her grandkids, who maybe aren't as graceful on, but they can sure handle a hockey game, and whether it's girls or boys. On the farm, Mom was telling me today.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Oops. Sorry about that. When Mom was telling me that on the weekends, Mom and Mary and my grandmother would do all the cooking, and that would be for the weekend, but also into the week, because my grandmother cooked for all the workers. And that's where Mary got her grasp on cooking and baking. And I can always remember one of the treats when Aunt Mary was coming to visit us, whether it was a birthday or an event. She always made her famous angel food cake. And that was always the one thing that you could always depend on Aunt Mary for, the sweets. Mary also enjoyed swimming and tennis. When they moved to 42 King High Drive, Aunt Mary would help my granddad in the garden. And even to this day, I'm sure in the backyard of her house is the largest rhubarb plant ever. It was in behind the garage, and you could always go down, and it was absolutely huge. So in the summer, a lot of the meals had rhubarb in them. When Aunt Mary was 19 when she married Uncle Gord, and they back in November 8th, 1952, and they moved into their Hillsdale home, where all the three boys were born. Don in Tom in 56, Don, and then later Dave. There is a saying, there is a special place in heaven for mothers who have all boys. So she's definitely there. I can remember a time where the Murrays always went to this time of year actually, would go to the CNE. And I remember on a couple of occasions, we would go down our family would join them. And I can always remember Aunt Mary coming to us and having a string of the tickets and stretching them out, tearing them off, and giving each of us a strip, and said, okay, the only stipulation was that we had to be back at a certain time, at a certain place at the end of the day. And so for us, that was heaven. It worked out that everyone was happy. She probably gave her a break, and we could do whatever we wanted to do. Gord's brother Bill and his wife Isabel lived around the corner on Manor Road. Cousin Barry and Margaret would often visit. Barry has written a little note that I will read to you now. My Aunt Mary was the heart of Hillsdale Avenue home. That was home base to many boys and girls in that neighborhood in our younger years. She had a perpetual smile and a positive outlook that softly shone upon us loud, crazy kids. She's one of those folks that you can only imagine did only good in her life. She was an especially good friend and sister-in-law to my mother, Isabel, for close to 70 years. We will all miss and cherish her memories of Mary Murray. Aunt Mary was also very busy in at Hillsdale. Kids were it was ball hockey, basketball, hockey on the street. She also was the church, the Manor Road United Church was also important to Mary. She was a longstanding member, Manor Road, walking to church where she taught Sunday school and participating as a member of the United Church Women's during the time of Manor Road until she moved to Dell Manor in Richmond Hill. Manor Road honored Mary with a UCW Lifetime Achievement Award. Mary and Gord often did holidays. It was either down to Sauble Beach or when the boys were older, to Perth, Ontario, just outside of west side of Ottawa, where they camped and had a pop-up trailer. And I can't imagine what it would have been like in the popped-up trailer on a rainy day with 3 boys and Uncle Gord. But she managed that. In the early 80s, Gord and Mary had the opportunity to buy a cottage right beside my parents' cottage and my Gord and Pearl's Aunt Pearl and Uncle Gord on my dad's side. And so they bought the cottage. And I remember Dad telling Gord that after a year, if he didn't like the cottage life, Dad would buy the cottage back. Well, needless to say, the 3 boys bought another lot in behind the cottage, and they're there to this day. And anyone who saw all the photographs that the photo shots that were earlier today, that a lot of the pictures were the cottage, just because that's where you grouped. That's where all the different families got together, whether it was mostly in the summer, but sometimes in the off season. Just trying to keep track here. Dave made me quite the list of things to talk about. My dad and my mom and Uncle Frank, where my mom was the oldest, Frank was the baby, Mary was in the middle. And because of that, she was a little shy, but she always was a great listener. And whenever you'd call her up or just talk to her, and she'd say, how are things going? And you knew that she was truly listening and wanted to know what you're doing, what the kids are doing. And vice versa. If I asked her how the grandkids were or how the boys were, she'd give me her version of the story of what was happening. When Uncle Gord passed away 13 years ago, they had been married 55 years. And they, and Mary continued to live in her Hillsdale home. And whenever Frank and Enid would come to town, they'd come and stay with her. And it allowed Frank and Enid to visit Enid's sister in Toronto. And Uncle Frank sent a little note to us, and I'll read it now. Whenever we visited Mary at Hillsdale, Mary and I would go grocery shopping together in a nearby metro. I enjoyed that time with her although I was always trying to keep up with her with her walking pace. I always enjoyed our talks together. Mary was down to earth and easy to talk to, almost about anything. We did brainstorm any subject on health, our families, anything going on at the time. She was always calm, cool, and collected, and always had a smile on her face. That is what I will really miss, and our talks and her smile. Hugs and kisses, Mary. Love you forever. After Gord passed away, Mary stayed at the house until she had a fall. And at that point, she decided to move up to Del Manor in Richmond Hill. And that part of her life, it made it really, it was one of those things that it allowed her and my mom to visit. They were a 5-minute or a $7 taxi drive to each other's place. But I remember when Frank talks about Mary and her pace, both mom and Mary had quite a fast pace. And I can remember being downtown. Well, I call Eglinton Avenue downtown because anyone who lives north of 7, Eglinton Avenue is downtown. And I was walking down on Eglinton Avenue with a colleague of mine, and we ran into Mary walking on the street. And so I introduced Mary to Casper, and we chatted for about 10 minutes. And after and then we went on our way. She had her errands to do, and we were driving home to the shop, and Casper goes, we were just chit-chatting. He says, you know, your aunt seems like a very happy person. She will live a long life. And so I'm thinking 94 years is pretty good. So once Mary moved to Del Manor, she would still do her laps in the building if the weather wasn't the greatest, or she would walk around the property outside. And the Del Manor people within, or anyone within the Del Manor family themselves, knew who Mary Murray was, because Mary was such an outgoing and pleasing person to be with that everyone knew who Mary was. Some of the outdoor visits that my mom had over the past few months, her latest one being just the Sunday before Mary passed on. And mom was saying, you know, I'd called mom up the day after she had visited Mary, and mom said, oh, well, we were allowed to go into Del Manor and visit, and they got to see her room and how beautifully the boys had helped Mary set it up. And mom said, oh, we had laughs. And she said, I couldn't believe it. She said, when we went to leave, we had been there 4 hours. And she said, you know, that was something that she couldn't believe. The time had just flown by so quickly. And you realize that the older you get, the time flies. When you're a kid, it takes forever. But that really gave her that, and between my mom and my sister Marie, who had taken mom, and even the fact that while they were visiting with Aunt Mary, my sister from Kelowna called, and Charlotte had a lovely chat with Mary that same day. And those are the things that you'll remember, not just the next couple of weeks, but forever. Mary always considered herself to be blessed with her family and friends. She was so thankful to having the connection with my family, the Barbers, the Mackays, the Murrays, and the Greenwoods. One constant message that we heard about Mary from everyone who had the ability to listen, and she had the conversation about everything. She could talk to you about this, that, and everything else. And often I would, when I speak to mom and say, well, how was Mary and what did you talk about? And mom would just say, oh, well, oh, this and that. Because they could spend an hour on the phone talking about the day events or things that were happening within both the families. She never judged. She was always supportive. When Uncle Frank graduated from Ryerson University, he had a job opportunity in Montreal, and he told Aunt Mary about this job, and they sat together and discussed what they thought, or what they thought he should do. And she helped him. He said he helped him make the decision to move to Montreal to get that electronics job that he was looking for. And so these were the things that she could sit down, discuss, weigh the pros and cons, and come up with a solution. Although Mary is gone, knowing that passed away during a sleep was a comfort. We believe the angels came and gently took Mary to the other side that night, as it was her time to go. If we were to summarize something that we might carry forward in memory of Mary, we could think about being kind to each other, listen to each other, and support each other unconditionally with love. Thank you.
Thank you. Lots of wonderful memories. I'm just going to try something for a second just to see, because we're all learning how to do this in a different. Hello, hello. That didn't do much. Okay, we won't. 1 second. I have another idea, because when we tested this, it did come on. Hello, hello. I'm just going to speak loud with your loud room voice. I think they can hear on there, but it did come over the speaker before. But we do have a few more family members. Who else is coming up for the family? Do you know who you are? Or are you okay, come on up. Perfect. Okay.
I'm going to, yes. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me well. My name is Christine Barber, and I am a family friend of Mary and the Murray family. And as cousin Art that was up here, so Art's dad, Jim, and my father, Gord, another Gordon, were brothers, and that brought our two families together. We also have the cottage beside Jim and Jean, so we had the privilege of getting to know the Murrays well and growing up with them over the summers and that. So I was really honored. Thank you, Dave, for asking me to say a few words. I loved your mom very much. She was everything and more that Art described to you. So when we think of Mary, the same words come up that Art was saying. I mean, it's kindness, genuine, always happy to see you. She was generous. She was a giver and a doer, gentle, polite, and she made people feel welcome and valued whenever in their presence or you arrived at her home. She was just so welcoming. She loved to laugh. She loved to hear stories. And although some might have thought, she's quiet by nature, she was a real talker. And one-on-one, you could just talk for hours with her. And what she was is a really good listener. And Art said that, and you were looking at my notes, Art, because I said the same thing. She was a really good listener. She was a great person to go to and talk about an issue or whatever, and a really good consult. So I had the pleasure a few years ago, I'll tell you a few stories about Mary. A few years ago, I had I called it a girls' retreat. I wanted to have a few of the ladies up to my cottage. I have a cottage about 20 doors down from the Barbers and the Murrays family cottage. And Murray came up, and it was Mary and my mom came up. And we had planned some activities, boat rides and walks and some nice meals. But the best part was being able to sit and have that one-on-one time and talk. And I was puttering around the kitchen, and my mom, she just passed away this last 9 months ago at the age of 96. My mom and Mary were talking for hours, like I had never, just constant. And I kept hearing all oh, you knew so-and-so? Are you kidding? Are you knew this? And a surprise in their voices that they were connecting people from 60 and 70 years ago. And I thought, is that ever great? People in their 90s now, and that you're always learning more about someone every point in your life. It was really great to see. We had great conversations. Mary actually went to school with my dad. So my dad, also born in 1927. He was a few years younger than my mother. They went to Dublin Public School, that one-room schoolhouse together, and my father remembers Mary well from a very young age. So she knew him a long time, Gord Barber, and it was just coincidence that we all ended up together on the same Silver Birch Beach up north, sharing family time together. So our family's naturally connected. Aunt Jean and Uncle Jim, obviously, and next door, and lots of good intertwining and memories on the summer cottage. My sister Kathy reminded me of some great little outings, and Aunt Jean, you could probably remember these when Gord would get tickets through Bell, through his work, for the Midland shows, and you would go into Midland to a movie or to a show. It was a theater, a stage show. And then they go to Mum's Restaurants. It was called Mum's Restaurants in Midland for dinner. And I think what great memories to have, couples going out and just having an evening out. And it made us feel good to see our parents doing something like that and to have nice friends to share that with. It's no secret the cottage was Mary's happy place. And as Art said, cottages are special because they bring family and friends together, and lots of great memories and things happen there. Socializing and enjoying. Mary's one favorite thing was enjoying the sunsets from the deck of her cottage. It's a western exposure, so the sun would go down over the islands, Beckwith and Christian Island. It was really beautiful, and she loved that. And when Mary was up for that weekend a couple of years ago at my cottage, she wanted to, I had planned, we're going down to your cottage, because she hadn't been up that summer yet. And she said, I just love to see the cottage. And she walked, and it was over, it's quite a distance to walk. and no cane, no walker. She hustled straight as can be, and she walked fast. I had to keep up with her pace, and we hustled down to the cottage, and we went down there, and I was so impressed. And she walked down. We sat on her deck. The sun was in a proper position. It was later in the afternoon. It was coming around, and she just sat there, and I just let her. We just sat there for a long time, and she gazed, and I can only imagine she was thinking about all the happy memories and what a nice place to be, just to have all those great memories and that went on. So getting back to Mary and how she loved to talk and get into a good conversation and things. And sometimes people would surprise you, a little zinger will come out and it's quite funny. So a friend of mine had come up to the cottage with his new, he'd bought a Tesla. So anybody who knows cars, you know what a Tesla is like. And the big thing was, let's take them all for a ride. So Mary and Jean and my mom got into the back seat, my father in the front seat with Jim. And of course, anybody who has a Tesla wants to take people for rides. And as they were driving out on the main road, there's a big hill that goes up. So there's a good stretch of open road that you can really open it up if you have to. And from the back seat, and I'm not sure, maybe Aunt Jean can tell me whether I somehow think it was Mary, or it was collaborative from both of them, came comments like, does this have a turbo charge or an overdrive? And the questions came. And at that point, Jim put the Tesla to work. And if anybody's ever been in one of those cars, it's like a roller coaster ride. Anything you have in your hands go flying, and you basically, you push right back into the seat. And they went for a Zoom ride up the hill in this car. So there was a great picture when they came back. I took of them in the back seat. And of course, when Dave called me and asked me to speak, and I was scrambling the last few days trying to find photos, I couldn't find this photo. So I called Jim, the fellow who had the Tesla, and he sends his condolences to the family. And he remembered that day so well. He was so laughing. He came back. He says, I couldn't believe it. I have these 3 senior women in the back, and they want to go in turbo mode. And it was hilarious. So we managed to find the picture. And I would say, any one of you, this book I made up for the Murray boys. There's a picture in the back. And Mary's smile is just the widest of all. They were like 3 schoolgirls there giggling in the back there. It was fun time. And it does your heart joy just to look at the picture. Those are the memories I'm going to keep of Mary, because she was the happiest person. And like Art said, she was always happy to see you. And, I can't say anything else but good about Mary. So Tom, Don, Dave, the Murray families, Kim, Sue, and the grandchildren, lovely Colin, Nolan, and Kieran, who you're still on my parents' fridge at home. So I was looking at you tonight, a bit younger, but your picture's on the fridge. I send my condolences, and Aunt Jean and your brother Frank, family. You're blessed to have such a great sister. A friend for so many years. She lived a very rich life, full life. And I was so proud to call her my friend and to know her. And we've all been blessed to have her in our lives. She'll be missed and remembered fondly with much love. And thank you. And have a look at some photos of her. It's great. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And you're going to speak for the grandchildren. All right.
Hi, I'm Margaret. I am from Gord's side of the family. My dad and Gord were brothers. So Dave phoned and asked me to do this, to speak on behalf of the grandkids. And I thought that was because I'm still so childlike myself. We're talking today, what are we going to do? Do I do it oldest to youngest, youngest to oldest, and was talking with Kieran because, you know, the girls were always at the end. So I'm going to read these youngest to oldest. So Kieran, you get to be first. Memory 1. The first time I saw Grandma Mary after COVID, I remember telling her about our new RV we bought. She was so excited. While we were there, we went on a walk and we talked mostly about the RV. She shared her camping days spent with Grandpa Gord and the family. That day was probably my favorite memory with her because it was the last time I saw her in person. I will always remember it. Memory 2 from Kieran, the cottage. I had so many memories with Grandma at the cottage. First of all, watching the sunset. She was always the one to make sure we would get to the other side on time. Dad would take 500 pictures, insert face here, every time. And we would be smiling at the camera more than looking at the sunset. Grandma really enjoyed this tradition. Grandma was so great to me. She would sit down and play board games with me at the cottage when I was younger. And Kieran's third memory, dance recitals and hockey games. When I was younger, when Kieran was younger, Grandma would attend my dance recitals. Whenever I would see her in the crowd, she would be smiling, which seemed to give me a lot of positive energy. She also attended many hockey games, and she would let me know that I played well and was so happy to see me play. Grandma Mary was my #1 supporter, and she would encourage me all of the time. She was always happy and brought positive energy whenever she entered the room. She set a great example for all of us on to be nice to everyone. Now, Nolan's memories. My grandma was an incredibly thoughtful, generous, kind, loving, and considerate individual. Those were just a few of the words to describe how great of a person she was. She would go out of her way to make my life and everybody else's better. When we were younger and at our cottage, we would ask her to come play some badminton with us. And being the thoughtful person she was, she would say yes. Her playing badminton with us made me so many fun memories. This is just one of the many examples of her making my life better and more enjoyable. Parental note. Mom was in her 80s and possibly even in her 90s when she played badminton with the kids. These are Colin's. I'd like to share a few stories of what I admire about my Grandma Mary. The first story is about the generosity and care of Grandma Mary. About 10 years ago at the cottage, it was a nice summer day, and I, being an impatient young child in the early afternoon, wanted a snack. So I asked for a snack, and my Grandma Mary gives me a nice, healthy apple. Only thing is, I used to be picky at what I would eat, so I told her I didn't like the skin on my apples. She, without even thinking twice, gets a potato peeler and peels off the skin so I can enjoy my midday snack. This story best exemplifies the little things she would do to make everyone around her happier. Parental note. Obviously, Colin's parents were not around during this request. The second story I have, and again, this is Colin, is on the support Grandma always showed me. At the start of the pandemic, I found myself playing more of my bass guitar. And during one phone call, I mentioned this to Grandma, who in turn wanted to hear more. I talked to her about what songs I was playing, and she recognized some and wanted to hear one. So I put the phone on speaker and played on the bass the vocals to House of the Rising Sun. I know that I didn't nail the song and I probably missed a few notes, but after I was done, Grandma Mary told me how well I played and how she enjoyed it. And Tim. See, Mary and Gord encompassed everyone into their family. And when Sue came and was part of our family, her kids were too. So this is from Tim. Mary and Gord always treated me so well and immediately made me feel part of the family since the first day I met them. My memories of Mary and Gord involve going to Hillsdale for Christmas and the fun that everyone would have and the amazing meal that would always be served. My favorite dish was always the turkey dinner, stuffing, and Mary's special potato salad. Everyone would make sure that I felt comfortable and part of the family, and Mary was a big part of this. I would go to visit Mary to cut her lawn or shovel her driveway and sidewalk, but Mary wouldn't let me go home without serving me a good home-cooked meal. I would work for about an hour and we would talk and eat dinner for about an hour. It was a nice, enjoyable evening. I also remember the cottage with Mary and Gord, spending time with them. Again, the family time and the acceptance of me as being part of the family and the great barbecued meals. Families come together, we always eat. Mary was an amazing grandmother for me. I enjoyed our conversations and she accepted me unconditionally as a member of the family, and I'm really going to miss her. But I will think of her at the family gatherings and when I am at the cottage. I was doing some contemplating myself last night when I received this email, and I thought, wow, how much of what I was thinking these kids, yes, you're a kid, Tim, said. And it just made me think that if you were to Google the phrase unconditional love, you would see a picture of Mary. She would take anyone in. She was friends with everyone. She just took them in. And that's what I'm going to take from Mary to try to live. See, when someone dies, you have the grief. But the thing you should look at next is what made you happy about that person? What made you happy about Mary? What can you give thanks and say thank you for that time, those emotions, the beach, the cottage, the camping, the parties, the family. And then you take what you are thankful for and think, how am I going to live this? How am I going to give service to Mary by living those happy memories? Amen.
Well, thank you. I think we're building this wonderful quilt with lots of colors. And now, just so we don't want to rush too far, did anybody else was around deck to do a tribute? No. Yes? Okay. Brian, over to you.
Hope it's not built for a 6'6" man. Having said that, I am Brian McIntosh. It's good to be here. I was honored to be asked by Dave to be here. Say a few words. Tom, Don, Dave, the entire Murray family, extended family. Before I share the scripture readings, I simply wish to offer you condolences from all of us in the McIntosh family, especially Ralph, my brother, Barbara, my sister, and myself, as well as the many friends who have gathered here and those beyond this place who grieve with you the loss of Mary. I also wish to thank John Joseph for including me in the service to provide this opportunity to say just a few brief words. And though the normal thing to say, I suppose, is that I'd known Mary my whole life, the truth is that she knew me long before I knew who she was. She was a kind and gentle soul, as we've heard, who always had an eye to both nurturing her own family and contributing much to her church family. A special friend to my mother, Betty. Of the three boys, I knew Dave the best, and we'd play lots of sports together and ride our bikes when we were younger, and then a little older, walk these surrounding streets around this church in the evenings when I had the responsibility to lock the church up at night. We had lots of good conversations. We were in Manor road shows together when we were younger. And Mary always supported us in the background in everything we did. And in some ways, she became the safe second mother to me. And I remember some of those sweets that we've heard about. I'll never forget the look of pride she had on her radiant face when I had the honor of performing the wedding of Dave and Kim, or the pride she expressed when I talked to her about her grandchildren. I think it's safe for me to say that Mary was the single most important influence in Dave's life to make him the man he is today. But we won't hold that against her. Seriously, blessings to all of you gathered here or watching elsewhere who knew and loved Mary. She will be deeply missed, though we trust that she is now in the everlasting arms of our Maker, upheld and honored for the life of devotion and great service, and as we've heard, unconditional love that she gave to all whom she knew. John Joseph has asked me to share two scripture readings. I'm going to read first from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 8. For everything there is a season, and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. And the psalmist offers assuring words from Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forevermore. May God bless to our ears and heart these readings from Scripture.
Thank you, Brian. I always thought I would be 6'6" when I was 15, and somehow it didn't quite happen. And I even bought a wetsuit hoping, and I had to sell it later on in life. But you remind us about the idea of looking up. And when in Toronto, we really don't have mountains. We have, well, we're not like Hamilton has one. Well, that's sort of a bit of a hill. But when I grew up in Etobicoke, we had Centennial Hill. We were so proud of it. It was a dump, actually, but then they covered it with dirt. And I learned how to grow and ski and do wonderful things, but it's about looking up, is it not? When we see the other passage chosen by family, 1 Corinthians, it's important to take a step back and remind ourselves we're not in a wedding today, but perhaps we're about building relationships. And when we hear the word love mentioned, I remember years ago learning that love, keritas, love of the other for the sake of God, isn't that what we do here and now as we remember Mary? If I speak in the tongue of people and angels, but do not have love, I'm only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith but can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It does not be proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs, and love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, and always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. And where there are tongues, they will be stilled. And where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when the completeness comes, what it is in part disappears. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I become an adult, I put the ways of child behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then we will see face to face. And now I know in part, and then I shall know fully, even as I am known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Take my life and let it be consecrated all for thee. Take my life and give me, and with ceaseless praise. There's something about memories and stories that we share. It's as if we could sit around for a very long time and imbibe and drink in, as if a great beverage cup is being passed from person to person, and each of us has a moment to honor and share. I feel the winds of life today, in every moment in time, out of every opening and way. Mary is a woman for all seasons, as we heard Brian read Ecclesiastes. That is the word spoken in this great book. The people of Israel they were away from home, wanting to return. How synonymous, isn't it? Right now, we've been apart for over 19 months, has it not been? And we've wanted to be together, and here we are. Perhaps not as many. I'm sure if it was regular time, we would have had to rent Maple Leaf Gardens, or the old Maple Leaf Gardens, the place it was. But I remember having, since this time, funerals with 10 and 15 and 20. But here we gather in this moment of time. Speaking of going home, Dvorak wrote that theme based on what he heard of Native American and African American music in the United States. But isn't that what it's about here and now? About the cottage, about the table sharing. And William Armstrong was a pupil of the famed Dvorak, and he wrote this great poem. But going home from Mary Murray, her home in the town and place, we know, just outside Hamilton. And it's amazing, Hamilton, we're always learning more about it. Just the other day, a person I know had been down near Balls Falls, and she was swimming in the falls. And I thought, why don't we know that in Southern Ontario, that you can go and swim in the falls or even explore them? Because we don't tell our story too well, do we? But at first glance, the story of Ecclesiastes seems too familiar. At second glance, there's a depth in a story filled with myth and legend. It's Ecclesiastes means a book about, and maybe walk your way through, one convenes or addresses an assembly, but about speaking about planting and growing. Just outside in the front of Manor Road, we have the vegetable patch of the Manor, inspired by the gift of planting tomatoes and planting radishes and carrots, about watching not only plants, not only vegetables, but memories grow. Walking through the many decades that held Mary's life, the tale of the roaring 20s. Now we're in the 2020s. The Great Depression, where I remember my mother told me they received oranges for Christmas. That was it. It was a bit different. World War II, the Cold War, the civil rights of the 60s, the oil crisis of the 70s. I remember when chocolate bars were 10 cents. Those were the days. And then they rose to $1 in less than a year. We knew inflation, did we not? And we still do. The hyperinflation of the 80s, the economic depression of the 90s, post 9/11, where we thought the world came to a crashing end. The advent of the internet. All will be better, won't it? Yes, indeed. I don't have Wi-Fi. I have hardwired in social media of the 2010s. Are you on Facebook? Are you on LinkedIn? Now it's TikTok, is it not? I always thought TikTok, when I first heard about it, meant a grandfather clock. Then I heard about this, a whole other passageway in understanding. Mary Murray, a leader of education and the United Church Women at Manor Road, also a worker of the switchboard. Imagine if Mary, there she, I think of Lily Tomlin in that old film, or on Laugh-In, where she's plugging in and plugging out. But people were connected, weren't they? Somehow, without smartphones, we showed up on time. We didn't have any voicemails, but we knew what each other was about, what each other was doing. A life that Mary grew up in. Married many years, a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a family member, and a friend. Today we look back at the words left unsaid, the meals not yet shared, the birthdays not yet discovered. As I said, my own mother, Lorraine, died in June 2019. We ask ourselves today how to walk in their footsteps, or even begin to try to fill their shoes. Now we are the next generation. A woman for all seasons. Mary Murray, I remember speaking on the telephone when I first arrived at Manor Road, and I remember she said she was up in Richmond Hill. And actually, I lived in Richmond Hill for a couple of years, lived on Crosby Street off of Balkan. But we talk about Eglinton being the downtown, but as this world grows faster than a speeding bullet, I would say a 407 and 400 is downtown. Because when we think of how far the GTA now goes, how many people live there, and we know that people are rushing out to Stouffville and Peterborough and Port Dover, the housing prices are going up. We're no longer in a small place. I share with you my own experience when I moved to Northern Ontario when I was ordained in 1989, the bustling town of Hearst. I remember driving 8 hours, 9 hours to Huntsville, and I knew I hit the GTA. And you say, how? No, Huntsville's not the G. Yes, it was, because you went from 2 lanes to 4, and suddenly it was a different world. It's hard to imagine how far we go, but this is Mary's life, isn't it? A woman for all seasons, and through the call and promise of the people of Ecclesiastes, they state in a few lines what it means to be God's chosen people, as we are today. There's a season for everything, and as the people are in season, not because of their own skill, but because God will be used to perfectly reflect this light. Mary was that beacon of hope and gratitude. As we hear in Psalm 21, I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does come my aid? Mary Murray was a depth-filled person who critically reflected on the meaning of life with us today in our contemporary society. She was a mountain person who helped us see what was next and help us feel courage to not be alone. The hill we referred to in this passage could have been the hills on which we build and discover when we think of the gift of who we are. I lift up my eyes to the hills as similar say of tomorrow I'll leave for Jerusalem. And Jerusalem isn't just that place several thousand miles away. It's the here and now where all God's people come together. When we lift our eyes and seek the insight to this moment, we ask why, how, and when. There is a rational side of death, but there's the inevitable side. There's the philosophical, passionate side that proclaims, and not ready to say goodbye, but whenever are we ready to say goodbye? I lift up my eyes to the hills, a woman for all seasons. Paul's letter to the Corinthians, love is patient, love is kind, for the love of God is broader than the measure of the mind, and the heart of the eternal is most wonderfully kind. Mary Murray shared a kindred spirit with many, and she's here and now in the words, in the stories, in the gift of the living God. She was a person ready to listen and respond and be the gift, living in compassion, blessing and hope in each waking moment. She stands as a person, remember, who leaves their pulse on the footprint of all our hearts today. Flow down, rivulet, to the sea, the tribute wave deliver. No more these steps shall be, forever and ever. My life flows on in endless song. Above earth's lamentation, we hear the real through far off hymn that hails a new creation. No storm can shake our inmost calm, while to that rock we're clinging. It sounds an echo in my song. How can I keep from singing? Let us pray. God, we look to you now. In each story, in each memory, it's as if we ignited a great beacon, a lighthouse on a hill. But the time is now to find that safe harbor where we become family and friends, extended clan, the village where we know and find our name known, where the butcher, the baker, and the candlestick maker are people who are colleagues, comrades on the way. We discover again this gift of courage, not alone, but together. As we remember the words that Christ taught us, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, and As we prepare to bring this time to a close, many family and friends will make their way to the cemetery, St. John's in Humber. Now, it's a gift to share this time. May God grant you always a sunbeam to warm you, a sheltering angel so nothing can harm you, laughter to cheer your faithful friends near you, and whenever you pray, heaven to hear you. Amen. And thank you all. We have 28 people on Zoom. A blessing. Over to you, Sharon.